Hyperemesis gravidarum is a life-altering condition. In addition to the debilitating physical symptoms, it can also evoke several heavy and unwanted emotions and feelings. These feelings can be overwhelming and scary. No one understands the darkness caused by HG better than pregnancy sickness support. We are raising funds to be able to enhance our mental health support services with our Kind2Mind campaign. Together we can help HG sufferers start their lives again after the devastation caused by HG. In this new HG and mental health series, Fundraiser Faye talks to HG sufferers and members of our counselling team to uncover the devastating impact that HG can have on a sufferer's mental health. Today I am joined by pregnancy sickness support volunteer Jade. Jade, thank you so much for joining me. Are you okay today?
Great, thank you. How are you, Faye?
I'm good, thank you. Let's get right into it then, Jade. How many times have you had HG?
Just once. I was planning to have 2 children, and HG was really the nail in the coffin on the one and done.
I hear that a lot. I'm not surprised, to be honest. It's a real battle to go through, isn't it? When did you know this isn't normal morning sickness? When did you realise this isn't what everybody goes through?
Honestly, I think as mothers, I think as women, we're just sort of told that a lot of things we're just told to endure. So having not been pregnant before, first time pregnancy, thinking this is horrendous. What is going on? But I've got nothing to compare it to. And I think it's not just things like HG, but a lot of people have endo and they don't realise because women's health is just not a priority for people. So I suppose I suspected that it wasn't normal about 5 or 6 weeks, and I just wondered when the Haagen-Dazs phase would start. I just felt horrendous. So I contacted the midwife and said, "Look, I've only been off my my birth control for about 2 months, but I suspect I'm quite far on, or maybe it was a little bit longer." But basically, as we were very lucky. I got pregnant very quickly. So I thought maybe I'd had spotting and not a proper period that first month, and I was actually closer to 12 weeks. So I begged for an appointment because I felt vile. And when I attended the appointment, and they did the scan, and they could tell you the date, the suspected time, the age of the fetus. She said 7 weeks, and I fell apart into tears with any energy that I had left. Just because it'd take. I live about 10 minutes walk from the hospital, 15 on a bad day, and it had taken a hell of a lot to get me to the hospital that day. So hearing that I was only 7 weeks in and there was going to be another 33 weeks, that's when I definitely knew something wasn't right.
And what were the physical symptoms of your HG?
I was lucky enough to not have as much physical sickness, but I had debilitating nausea.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, like if you've had quite a bad bender and you're lying in bed thinking, oh my God, the world's moving. Like I had that for about 30 weeks, just lying in bed, and I couldn't even have the TV on, or sometimes there couldn't be people talking. I just had to be in silence, in the dark, just making sure there was as little possible to make it feel like more was disturbing me. I was incredibly thirsty, but the thought of even certain types of water would make me feel sick. So my husband would come home with the wrong brand of water, and I'd turn it away. And because of that, subsequently I had horrendously dry hands and face. Some other things I've been quite lucky before in my life, not really thought about, that I'd never moisturized my hands before. I had a very light moisturizer up until HG, but my skin was flaking up in parts. Up until 12 weeks, I had lost 8 kilograms, which isn't a normal state of affairs for me because I'm big bodied and I always have been, even growing up. But I'd lost weight very rapidly because I couldn't stand the thought of any taste whatsoever. If my husband made a coffee at the other end of the house in the kitchen, I could smell it. The smell thing was another level. It was pretty grim. it's a really weird experience having lived through it, because now, pretty much the day she came out of me, the nausea was gone. After 4 or 5 months, I could have coffee again, and chocolate, and it's totally different now, but it felt like the end of my days. Like I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't I could I couldn't get out for a wee, but I didn't need to wee as much because I just didn't have any fluids in me. Yeah, and every week or so my husband would try and get me to walk out the house, and I would cry and bitch and moan the entire time.
What did it do to you mentally?
There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of guilt. My husband's studying as well as working, which he couldn't do because he became like a carer to me. And not even just for the things it did to him and the state of the house. And, a lot of other people go through this natural process of nesting when they have their first child, don't they? They paint the nursery, they put the furniture up. I didn't do any of that. Not till very, very late on. After a couple of rounds of drugs, we found the one that started to work, but it was by the end of like my third trimester, and things were starting to get a bit easier. I could get out of bed, I could go shopping every 4 days or something like that. But the guilt associated with that, because that's not normal. Not everybody else is just normally, I don't know, they're getting their husbands to go to McDonald's, aren't they? That's about it. Moaning about their massive ankles. I was lying in bed, not doing anything. I had to call in, I had this guilt from work as well, because I was struggling to even prepare handover notes for them to go on maternity leave with. And because of that, actually, even now, 2 years on, going back to work, I feel like my progression at work has been sort of stilted. Not from that kind of. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, because I felt like that exact same thing happened to me. Obviously in a previous role to what I'm doing now, but that's exactly how I felt. Like they made me feel like I had let them down and that I didn't deserve to go any further because I'd let them down.
Well, it feels like my maternity replacement has sort of surpassed me. And I don't think it's necessarily my company haven't been supportive, or that my maternity replacement is, because actually we're friends. I didn't know before the role, but she's a good woman. But it doesn't. But now, because of that time that's passed, and also maybe it's in my head a bit, but it definitely from a progression point of view, personally as well. Like I don't feel like I feel rusty still 2 years on. And the other thing, the really cripplingly bad guilt thing, was that my daughter was planned. I took my coil out just after I turned 30. Well, actually, we're in lockdown. And when they told me I couldn't get my coil taken out because of lockdown, I was in tears then. And I thought, oh, man. And then they sent me an email in May saying, you need to come in for cervical screening. And I said, well, you're down there.
The oven's on, let's bake.
Yeah. So I was really lucky. To get pregnant. Very lucky. I've got friends who were trying to get pregnant before I got pregnant, and are still trying to get pregnant. So there's the guilt of talking to my close friends about this pregnancy, and now having a healthy, frankly, amazing child. But to them who've just been, it's not happened for them. So there's that guilt as well, because I think you hear some people saying, well, at least you could get pregnant. Do you know what I mean? And I feel for them, because that is horrendous, but it was not the ride I was promised, believe me. And there was some very, very dark days. I thought I couldn't do it. And I had an inkling from when she was very, very little, that I just had to get through her. She wouldn't have a brother or sister, but I just needed her now, and that we were in it together, and that helped a lot. And from not coaching, from volunteering, from hearing other people get through their pregnancy, there was one other first time mother. I just knew she was in the same boat. She was low. Do you know what I mean? And it was such a weird experience being on the other end of it, because I was just thinking, oh, I can't say anything to her, and I don't want her to, because I'm very pro-choice. I just thought, oh, just get through this one, and you'll feel better. And she does. I think she has, and she loves her daughter. But it's such a cruel thing, because when you think there's going to be another 30 weeks of it, and you're not sure you'll survive yourself, yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, I just remember thinking, Jade. I just remember thinking, how are we going to survive this? Like, I couldn't. My husband say, like, just take it day by day. I was like, I don't think I can even take it day by day. I've got to take it like minute by minute, because it just did. It just didn't. I didn't believe that I could get through it
No, and
at all.
you can't tell them because they've got no idea. They've got no way of knowing. But it did suddenly become very isolating, very lonely. Like my best friend in the entire world, my husband is, and then suddenly to feel like he could possibly resent me, and he doesn't really know what's going on. All I know is he gets home from work, and the first thing he does is open the window because I've been in bed all day, and it's the air's close in the room, but it's about the only smell I can take.
Yeah.
It was awful, and I couldn't shower. And when I could shower, because just because of standing up, I couldn't keep myself standing up for 20 minutes to wash myself. And suddenly I'm washing myself with Sanex and just anything that doesn't have any odor. It just, oh, yeah, pretty grim a life with HD. So I hear it far too often from people who meaning to care well about me. Well, when is the next one coming? Oh, your daughter, she's going to be. Yeah, thanks. I've already thought about my daughter not having a playmate, and I go to the park, and I did it today. So like 4 kids hanging out, and um, one's picking up the toddler and putting them on the slide, which and passing it to their older sister so that she can help. And I can't give her that, and I can never give her that now. So I already feel guilty enough for that without people telling me.
But it is so, like, Jade, so many people, um, that's the path they take, because it is so much to go through. It's so much to go through. It's so long, it's so arduous, it's so debilitating. And that's when you were in your first pregnancy. And
That
then you'd have a toddler to look after. You'd have a toddler to look after, sorry, and suffer at the same time.
Well, yeah, it's not even because of me that I don't do it. It's because of her, because she, there's she's going through a bit of a clingy phase, admittedly, and I'm not sure. I think it's because she's moving key worker. But long story short, I am her world at the moment, and I know you mums are every toddler's world, but particularly now because there's just a little bit of change at nursery. So I can hear my husband get up with her in a morning because it's my morning to sleep just an extra half. Can hear her as "Mamai, Mamai, Mamai," and I'm like, oh gosh, just let me sleep. So imagine 9 months of me laying in bed. She doesn't deserve that. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
And I don't think my career could take another time round either.
How were you supported by the medical team around you?
Um, Depending on which people you ask me, poorly. And
We'll start with your GP, because presumably your GP was the first port of call.
at, at 5 weeks though, I was very much bothering my GP, like what is going on? Um, and the first time it was shrugged off, and I thought, oh, this is going to get. It must be really late on in my pregnancy. It must be like 11 weeks or something, because this is what happens in the first trimester. Have a ginger biscuit and calm down, you know. And then I called the doctor again, and it was exactly the same story. And the frustration at this point. So it was only when I saw my midwife, who needs a medal or a cuddle at least. She said to me, this isn't normal, after seeing me break down, and this, and explaining what had happened to me, and why this was so awful, and how I couldn't actually cope with this anymore. um she gave me a leaflet or maybe she didn't give me a leaflet, but she told me about the charity. She told me about PSS and some resources, and when I contacted someone at PSS, they were like, because HD is something I'd never heard of. When I tell other people, they sort of know about it um, because of Kate, the royal Kate. But I hadn't heard of it, and then I was given this list of symptoms. And so when you're overcome with exhaustion and nausea and a whole flurry of other things, you the immediate thing is just that you feel sick. It's not necessarily all the other little bits about like what's happening to your body, what's happening to your nails, what's happening to you're not pooping, or all the other horrible things like constipation. Um, you look down this list that PSS give you, and suddenly you notice you tick nearly every single one, and it sounds awful, but it's actually really validating as well. And you're like, oh, so you call the doctor and you go, yes, this is happening to me, and this and this and this, and I'm not crazy. And when I rang the third GP I got was a female doctor, and the first two had been male, and you know exactly what I'm saying. She was like, oh, yeah, this isn't normal. This isn't nice, is it? You shouldn't be going through this. And she tried me with the first type of drugs I tried, which might have been cyclazine. I can't remember, but they're very reluctant to give you some because even in Britain in 2023, the priority medically is your baby, not your unborn tiny baby. And of course, I want a healthy child. I'm glad I have a healthy child, but ultimately, living people to me are the priority. And I find it shocking that because we don't do any research on this, we don't have any research to back up what's healthy and what's not healthy for babies and fetuses. So it took me till about week 22, 25 to find a drug that worked, having gone through lots of different ones. Not just different ones, but different dosages, just to see if you could just get through on this. Can you just cope with this? And the answer was always no. I'm still in bed. I'm still in bed, losing weight, dehydrated. Yeah. And from what I gather, I'm still pretty on the lucky spectrum from HD because I didn't have to have an intravenous. I have my life and I have my daughter's life, and that's unfortunately more that can be said than some sufferers. But it doesn't mean I should put up with it, and it doesn't mean anybody listening out there should put up with it because it's not normal.
Jade, before we finish, have you got any advice for anybody who's suffering at home right now and is really struggling with the physical and the mental effects of HG? Have you got any advice for them?
You don't deserve it. You're stronger than you think. Carrying that shit up with your GP, with your medical team, there's nothing you don't deserve. It's a very trying physical process being pregnant anyway. They think it's like running a marathon, don't they? Even if you're having a healthy pregnancy, it's a lot of work. So if it's not, who have you bothered? If it's just regular pregnancy sickness, who have you bothered? You'll get over it. That life will move on. You don't want to find yourself in a position at 12 or 13 weeks where you're in hospital on an IV. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you are like me in bed for 30 weeks. That's 30 weeks of your life gone. You would never say to anyone anywhere else, stay in bed for 30 weeks. It's not normal. And it does get better, and it can get better, but you've got to prioritize yourself.
Yeah, that's great advice. Jade, thank you so much for joining me today.
That's all right. Thank you for inviting me.
It's okay. It's lovely to speak to you. If you or someone you love is suffering, please visit www.pregnancysicknesssupport.org.uk.